Do you believe that sometimes love is so strong that neither time nor distance nor loneliness can erase it? Well, get ready, because what you're going to hear today is not just a story, it's a life lesson capable of bringing tears to even the toughest of hearts. Imagine losing your best friend, the one who was by your side in your glory days and your darkest moments, and 10 years later, out of nowhere, discovering that he's alive, and he didn't come back empty-handed. No. He brought with him something unbelievable, something that will make you rethink everything you believe about love, hope, and the silent power of perseverance. Many would say that after so much time, it's better to forget and move on. Others would swear that certain losses are definitive. But what if I told you that reunion can be even more powerful than the pain of separation? And that life, with its mysterious wisdom, was just waiting for the right moment to surprise you. The great truth is that most people underestimate what courage, kindness, and faith can silently build. We live in a world that trivializes affection, that laughs at compassion, that distrusts genuine respect, and that often forgets the power of kindness that inhabits small gestures. However, some stories, rare as rough diamonds, emerge to rub in our faces the beauty of humanity, understanding, and sincere altruism. This story is one of them. It will touch your heart, provoke your soul, and rekindle that flame of gratitude that sometimes sleeps inside us. Prepare yourself to feel the lump in your throat, the tear that insists on falling, and the smile that springs forth involuntarily. Because today you will discover that yes, true love survives everything: fear, insecurity, loneliness, and even that which seemed impossible to overcome. So stay with me until the end of this video, because you won't want to miss a single second of what happened to Michael and his inseparable friend Thor. Their reunion is not just a moving story. It's living proof that life, no matter how hard it may seem, always has room for reconciliation and miracles that only those who believe in true love can witness. You'll understand how the resilience of a pure heart can move mountains, how inspiration is born precisely from the greatest pain, and how oftentimes what we think is lost is just waiting for the right time to return, stronger, wiser, and full of compassion. Get ready. This story will touch you deeply. And who knows, that after reading it, you might also feel like finding something again that you thought you had lost forever. From the first lick, it seemed that destiny had already planned that rare and precious friendship. Michael, a boy with curious eyes and an easy smile, found in Thor, a golden-haired mongrel, the most faithful of companions. Together they explored the park like two adventurers in search of invisible treasures, guided only by courage, hope, and the powerful bond of affection that had blossomed between them. On cold nights, while the wind whistled outside, it was the warmth of love that warmed them both, nestled under their grandmother's patched blanket. It was in those moments, full of empathy and silent understanding, that the true wisdom of life whispered precious lessons to their hearts. The importance of kindness, perseverance, and mutual respect. Sometimes Michael would tell Thor about his fears, as if confessing secrets to an invisible guardian, and Thor, with a look full of compassion and humility, seemed to understand every word, responding with brief barks or simply nuzzling like a living symbol of the power of kindness. One morning, but one that will remain forever in memory, Michael stumbled and fell badly while playing. Blood on his knee, tears on his face. But before despair could swallow him up, there was Thor, running like an arrow, barking to get attention, pushing Michael with his nose so he would get up. It was not just an act of protection, it was a gesture of reconciliation with the courage that lived in the boy's chest, a spark of resilience that would teach him to always get up, even when life fell in the invisible ways. There, in that touching simplicity, were seeds of humanity and gratitude that he would carry with him forever. Thor was more than a dog. He was a mirror of understanding, a silent teacher of honesty and altruism, someone who, even without words, showed him the strength of trust and true inspiration that arises from small daily actions. Anyone who has experienced a love like this knows it is like finding your own heart beating outside your chest. During the golden afternoons, while the sun drew playful shadows on the ground, it was common to see Michael and Thor sharing dreams and silences. It was in these serene moments that the boy's mind would wander, fed by the touch of sincerity and the power of kindness that only the innocent know how to cultivate. Thor was his squire in imaginary adventures, his counselor in childhood dilemmas, his shelter in the storms of loneliness and insecurity that from time to time tried to infiltrate. Some nights Michael would whisper promises to the wind. He swore to protect Thor forever, with the courage of someone who loves without reservations. That friendship, sewn with threads of hope, humility, and altruism, was in fact a silent pact between two souls who recognized each other beyond time. Little did they know that life, capricious and full of mysteries, was already plotting tests that would demand even more perseverance, wisdom, and above all, faith in the power of goodness that united them. On a normal afternoon, one of those that go unnoticed by the hurried eye, Michael realized that Thor had not returned from his last run around the yard. At first, he thought it was just another one of those games, where Thor hid behind the bushes, and then jumped out like a rocket, his eyes shining with hope and adventure. But the minutes turned into hours, and laughter gave way to fear, a cold shadow that tightened his chest tightly. Michael ran through the corners of the neighborhood, calling his friend's name in a choked voice, increasingly filled with insecurity and loneliness. With each street he searched, each gate he peeked through, the bitter feeling of helplessness grew, as if life were giving him a cruel lesson about the price of trust and true empathy. The respect and love he felt for Thor only increased his anguish, and that day the sky seemed to cry with him, in a fine rain that soaked his soul. The search became a daily mission, carried out with resilience, courage, and perseverance, fueled by the power of kindness that Michael refused to abandon. Homemade pamphlets, shouts in the streets, desperate pleas on social media, all mixed with a moving demonstration of compassion and altruism from the neighbors who, touched by the boy's pain, also searched for Thor, as if they were looking for a piece of themselves. In each sad look, in each promise of help, there was a spark of humanity and understanding that warmed the already wounded heart. Michael dreamed at night of the reunion, feeding hope like someone lighting a candle against the darkness. But when he woke up, the bed next to him was still empty, and the cold blanket seemed to mock his faith. It was not just the loss of a dog, it was the physical absence of a friend who had taught him so many times about honesty, affection, and the true meaning of gratitude. Inside the house, the emptiness was almost palpable, like a silent visitor who had settled in every corner. The untouched bowl of food, the chewed-up toy forgotten on the couch, the scratch on the door, everything was there still, like evidence of a happiness that now seemed so distant. In the midst of his loneliness, Michael would sometimes sit on the living room floor, his eyes fixed on the door, believing, with the stubbornness typical of someone who truly loves, that at any moment Thor would cross the threshold, wagging his tail in celebration. It was in these moments of moving sincerity that Michael would find, without realizing it, the wisdom hidden in pain. That true love carries within itself the courage to wait, the humility to accept, and the strength of compassion. And, without knowing it, he began to understand that sometimes life separates what was meant to be reunited, a reunion that would require even more patience, inspiration, and the power of kindness than he had ever imagined. The years passed, but for Michael the wound of loss never truly healed. Life went on, full of new faces, new commitments, and even some new smiles, but at every corner, in every fleeting shadow, his heart still leapt, believing, for just a second, that he would see Thor coming back to him. How many times had he stopped in the middle of the street, his eyes brimming with tears, mistaking another dog for his old companion? It was as if hope and fear danced together inside him, waging a silent battle fueled by love, insecurity, and longing. At those times it was difficult to maintain the humility necessary to accept that certain pains are part of the human journey. And yet, the living memory of Thor taught him day after day to trust in the resilience of the human heart, in the perseverance of those who love beyond absence. Many nights, sitting by the window, Michael would go through his memories as if leafing through an album of invisible memories. The sweet laugh when Thor rolled in the mud, the warm touch of his nose on winter mornings, the familiar sound of paws scratching the door. Each fragment, imbued with affection and compassion, was capable of drawing silent tears from him. There was a deep, almost instinctive understanding that disappearance had shaped his soul, making him more cautious, more suspicious, but also, paradoxically, wiser and more attentive to the subtleties of love. Michael began to avoid new bonds with animals, afraid of feeling again the loneliness, fear and pain of such a brutal loss. The courage to start over seemed to have been buried along with the memories of Thor, dormant deep in his chest where, however, the faint flame of hope, inspiration, and the healing power of kindness still flickered. Even with the passing of time, the pain intertwined with the roots of his personality, like a tree that grows crooked by the constant wind. Some called it maturity, others coldness, but those who knew him closely knew it was just the reflection of a soul that had learned too early the price of true humanity and sincerity in bonds. Thor's disappearance had honed in Michael a rare sensitivity, capable of perceiving in the smallest gesture the hidden pain in people. Just as he knew how to identify courage disguised as a smile, altruism hidden in simple actions, and honesty in the most silent words. Even though gratitude for the years shared still sustained him, there was a nostalgia in his gaze that told stories that his mouth never had the strength to say. And little did he know that life, always full of mysteries and unlikely reconciliations, was preparing a new adventure that would test all the courage built over the years. It was a cloudy afternoon, one of those that seemed to whisper mysteries in the air, when Michael's life changed again. It had been 10 long years since Thor's disappearance, and the pain, although dormant, still kept him company on silent nights. Sitting at the kitchen table, distracted by a cup of warm tea, he heard the phone ring, a common sound, but at that moment it seemed to carry an omen. On the other end of the line, a hoarse voice, full of sincerity and mystery, asked, "You lost. A dog named Thor, right?" Michael froze. An avalanche of fear, hope, and insecurity crashed inside him. It was as if the understanding he had cultivated so much over the years was being put to the test. Would love withstand the weight of disappointments? The simple idea rekindled a timid flame of inspiration and courage, as if the universe was offering him a second chance to experience the power of kindness. For hours, Michael stared at the wall, trying to distinguish what was real from what the fear of loneliness created. The voice on the phone had been brief, leaving more questions than answers, and the story seemed so unlikely that even the wisdom acquired through years of reflection hesitated to believe it. Thor, alive, after so long. Deep down, Michael fought against hope, fearing that the compassion he had silently nurtured for years would make him a victim of a cruel illusion. And yet something stronger, a kind of ancestral resilience, the same one that moved generations of brave souls, kept him from giving up. Maybe gratitude for having loved so deeply was the compass now. Maybe it was the affection hidden in the cracks of his hardened heart that pushed him forward. Adventure, the old friend who had never abandoned him, was knocking at his door again. Unable to sleep, Michael spent that night revisiting every memory, every sensation that Thor had, left engraved in his being. He remembered the walks, the knowing glances, the lonely nights overcome by the silent presence of his four-legged friend. It was as if, between the lines of his own story, there had always been a call for something greater, the definitive reconciliation, with love, humanity, and the courage to believe again. The possibility of meeting Thor again, even if small, lit a spark of hope in Michael, capable of moving mountains, because deep down, he knew some bonds, woven with honesty, respect, and altruism, never break. And even if that connection was just a breath of illusion, it would be worth moving forward, guided by the kindness of faith and the transformative power of perseverance that life subtly insisted on teaching. The next day, driven by a mixture of hope and fear, Michael packed a small backpack and set off. He didn't know exactly what he would find, but courage spoke louder, driven by faith in understanding and the love that had never abandoned him. Each kilometer traveled seemed to pull at invisible threads of memories. The first time he saw Thor, the first night they slept together, their first adventure in the park. As the car glided along the road, Michael felt his loneliness dissolve in the gratitude of being able to relive, even if only in his mind, so many precious moments. Inspiration sprouted amidst the longing, reminding him that sometimes the true adventure is not in finding, but in allowing oneself to search. Between one curve and another, wisdom whispered, "Those who have affection in their hearts are never truly lost." The stops along the way became small rituals of reconciliation with himself. At a gas station, he saw a man feeding a stray dog, and in that gesture of kindness and altruism, Michael saw the mirror of humanity that still resisted in the world. Every glance exchanged, every story heard in the small towns he passed through, rekindled his confidence in the power of kindness. He met people who, without even knowing his drama, offered a sincere smile or a hot coffee. There, in the simplicity of the encounters, the certainty that love and respect were still the greatest forces in existence flourished. With each dawn, he renewed himself, even though he carried in his chest the fear of disappointment and the insecurity of uncertainty. Life, generous and unpredictable, showed that the true journey is always an adventure of the soul. As he approached the destination indicated in the call, Michael felt his heart beat in a way he had not felt for a long time. It was fear, it was hope, it was all mixed together in a storm of emotions that only those who have truly loved can understand. Then he remembered his grandfather's advice. "When doubt paralyzes you, let the honesty of your love guide your steps." And that was exactly what he did. He took a deep breath, wiped away the tears that kept coming, and moved forward, taking with him the courage born from pain, the wisdom honed in solitude, and the perseverance fueled by Thor's living memory. Little did he know that, with each step, life was aligning invisible pieces for a reunion that would change his story forever, renewing in his heart the purest and truest hope. The gate creaked lightly as Michael pushed it open, his heart almost jumping out of his mouth. In front of him, a simple yard, old trees swaying in the wind, and a heavy silence full of meaning. In the background, lying near a makeshift little house, was an older, golden-haired dog with scars that told stories of resilience and perseverance. Michael could barely take a step. His legs were shaking, his breathing was short, as if all the love, gratitude, and hope he had stored up for years had decided to explode all at once. Thor raised his head with difficulty, looked long, and in a magical instant something shone in his eyes. The old confidence, the old compassion that no time or distance could erase. It was living proof that true affection does not fade, does not corrupt. It only matures with the wisdom of time. The first movement was timid, as if insecurity was still testing the reality of what was happening. Michael called out the name he had never stopped whispering on lonely nights, Thor. And then, as if that sound broke the barriers of time and pain, the old friend stood up, with the slowness of someone who has felt the weight of years, but with the courage of someone who recognizes the call of love. His tail began to beat the ground, then the air, then in an awkward celebration, in a gesture full of kindness and emotion. Michael ran, knelt, and in a hug that seemed to stitch together all the invisible wounds, he found part of himself again. There, between tears and laughter, a powerful reconciliation was sealed, a silent miracle made of humanity, honesty, and pure compassion. It was as if the entire universe conspired for that moment of emotion and the power of kindness. Thor's familiar scent, the rough touch of his warm tongue, the breathless, happy sound, it was all a reunion of sensations that Michael had never imagined reliving. There was no more doubt, no more fear, no more loneliness, only the deep certainty that certain bonds, woven by sincerity and true inspiration, can overcome anything. Thor's scars, which could have been a cause for sadness, were in fact medals of survival, irrefutable proof of his resilience and the courage to have resisted. Michael understood without needing words that he too carried invisible marks, and that now together again they could transform these scars into bridges of healing. In that long embrace, amidst tears of forgiveness and gratitude, a new adventure began, even stronger, even more full of love, compassion, respect, and hope to be shared. Thor was no longer the same restless puppy who ran aimlessly in the park, but in Michael's eyes he was even greater. Time, which so often seems cruel, had left its mark in a tender way. His fur, once golden and vibrant, now showed strands as white as early snow. His paws, which had once defied the world, walked with the caution of someone who had learned the hard way, the importance of perseverance. The scars scattered across his body told silent stories of resilience, honesty, and hope, stories that not even 1,000 words could convey. He was a different Thor, but no less worthy of all the love, respect, and gratitude that Michael felt. There, in front of his aging friend, he understood the depth of humanity. We are all made of time, scars, and the kindness we carry between one wound and another. In Thor's eyes, there was still that unmistakable glow of compassion and wisdom, the same look that had once calmed a frightened boy on stormy nights. Now Michael saw not only the dog he loved, but also a symbol of his own journey, the courage to face fear, loneliness, and insecurity without losing the ability to love. In Thor's every shuffling step, there was a silent message of resilience and selflessness, a reminder that life is worth living even when it carries the weight of past pain. Michael felt in his heart a new kind of reconciliation, not just with Thor, but with himself, with time, and with the life we so often try to control, but which insists on surprising us with acts of pure power and goodness. As they were reunited, Michael learned to see the beauty in his old friend's limitations. Their games were no longer frantic, but carried a touching sincerity, an expression of affection that manifested itself in small gestures. A snout nuzzling against a leg, a long, patient look, a heavy sigh as he fell asleep on someone's lap. The inspiration that Thor now brought was different, not that of unbridled adventure, but that of presence, of the deep understanding that being together, even in silence, is an act of powerful love. Each scar, each grey hair, was celebrated as a trophy won with courage and humility. And so, amid the marks of time, Michael and Thor rediscovered an even stronger connection, built not only by the memory of what they had been, but by the loving and sincere acceptance of what they had become together. It was on a lazy afternoon, while Michael was combing Thor's graying hair, that something unusual happened. Hanging from his old friend's neck, hidden beneath the worn necklace, was a small medallion that Michael had never seen before. Curious, with the courage mixed with the understanding that life had taught him, he opened the compartment and found something unbelievable. A small, aged photograph with a hand-scrawled phone number on the back. A thrill filled the room, filling the air with a bittersweet mix of hope, fear, and gratitude. How had Thor managed to do this? What mystery was hidden behind such a simple object, yet so full of love, affection, and inspiration? Michael felt his heart race. Perhaps there was a much bigger story behind it all, a story woven by the power of kindness in places he had never imagined, driven by genuine curiosity, newly awakened courage, and the resilience that had always accompanied him. Michael dialed the number with trembling fingers. On the other end of the line, an emotional voice answered, full of sincerity and respect. It was an elderly woman named Donna Lucia, who tearfully told me that she had found Thor years ago, wounded and frightened, and that ever since then she had welcomed him with altruism and compassion. He always carried the medallion, as if he knew that one day he would need to find his way back. During those years, Donna Lucia, who never had children, placed all her love, kindness, and hope in Thor. Michael listened to everything in silence, feeling a wave of humanity and reconciliation take over his soul. Thor, in his silent journey, had saved another life while trying somehow to keep the memory of home alive. With tears in his eyes and his chest full of gratitude, Michael understood that the reunion with Thor was not only the closing of a cycle, but the opening of a new chapter filled with wisdom and love. Life, with its tortuous paths, had used Thor's silent perseverance to spread seeds of kindness, touching not only Michael's heart, but also Donna Lucia's. It was impossible not to be moved by the grandeur of that story, full of affection, respect, and courage. That small photograph, forgotten by ordinary eyes, was a silent testimony of the power of honesty, compassion, and inspiration that a simple act of love can bring. Michael, at that moment, knew There was much more to discover, and the next answers would be as surprising as the secret kept by his faithful friend. In the days that followed, Michael and Donna Lucia exchanged phone calls and meetings, piecing together the loose pieces of Thor's story. Each conversation brought forth new emotions: gratitude for the lives they had crossed, understanding for the silent pain, and a shy joy filled with affection and hope. They discovered that after his disappearance, Thor had wandered for miles, facing loneliness, fear, and insecurity with the resilience that only a pure heart can carry. He was found injured on the side of a road, in an almost cinematic act of survival and courage. Donna Lucia, without hesitation, welcomed that vulnerable being with a kindness that few can practice. She offered him shelter, love, and respect, also filling the void that time had left in his lonely life. The scars that Michael now caressed were witnesses of invisible battles: cold nights without shelter, long days without direction, constant threats that only the perseverance of true love could overcome. Thor had not only survived, he had spread humanity wherever he went, awakening inspiration and altruism even in the hardest of hearts. In each testimony they received, from Donna Lucia's neighbors, from the veterinarians who treated him, from the children who fed him, the same realization emerged: Thor was more than a dog. He was a living bridge between souls in need of compassion and sincerity. Michael, upon hearing each story, felt his confidence reborn, like a persistent flower that sprouts in the arid soil. It was as if the power of kindness had guided his friend during all those years of absence. With a heart full of understanding and humility, Michael understood that Thor had not only resisted, he had fulfilled a silent mission to spread kindness, respect, and love at every step of his journey. That adventure, initially marked by the pain of loss, now revealed itself to be a rich tapestry of reconciliation and hope, where each thread was sewn with altruism and honesty. With each revelation, Michael saw not only the past being reassembled, but also the promise of a different, lighter, more human future. The unexpected answers brought a new layer of wisdom. Sometimes loss is just a painful way of learning to value the depth of encounters, and without realizing it, Michael was already preparing himself for a new beginning, where love and compassion would once again be the pillars of his journey. With Thor by his side again, Michael felt that life was beginning to dance to a different rhythm, more measured, lighter, fuller of love and wisdom. The mornings began to smell of hope and affection. The nights were filled with sighs of gratitude and understanding. Each walk in the park, now at a slower pace, was a silent celebration of the power of kindness that had guided their lives until then. Michael relearned to trust, to laugh sincerely, to look to the future without the weight of loneliness and fear. Thor, even with his slow pace, carried a serene, almost magical energy that inspired kindness and respect wherever he went. It was as if the reunion had transformed not only their lives, but also the small piece of the world they touched with their presence. Inspired by this new phase, Michael began to dream big again. He opened a small community project to rescue abandoned animals, driven by the courage, altruism, and perseverance that Thor had taught him. In every shy look from a rescued puppy, in every emotional smile from an adoptive family, he saw echoes of his own story of resilience. Thor, of course, was the mascot of the project, a living legend of the compassion and inspiration that life can offer when we honestly surrender ourselves to the adventure of loving again. Together, they spread seeds of humanity and hope, reminding everyone that the true treasure of life lies in the connections we cultivate with humility and respect. The fear of suffering still existed, but now it was small compared to the courage to live. As they walked side by side, old and young, Michael knew deep in his soul that this was just the beginning of something much greater. The story that began with tears of loneliness and pain now unfolded in vibrant chapters of reconciliation, friendship, and unconditional love. Thor, with his marks of time and his serene gaze, continued to be his silent mentor, teaching that true strength lies in the ability to start over, even after losses, even after so many falls. And so as the sun set, dyeing the sky golden. Michael smiled, feeling in his chest the deep certainty that, with courage, respect, and the power of kindness, every end can in fact be a new and inspiring beginning. And now tell me, after all this, what still holds you back from the fear of starting over? How many connections, how many incredible reunions could you be postponing simply because you let hope fall asleep? Isn't it time to believe again in the power of love, understanding, and kindness that live inside you? This story of Michael and Thor teaches us that even the most painful losses carry seeds of resilience, courage, and inspiration. Seeds that, if cultivated with humility and perseverance, blossom in the most unlikely moments. Think carefully. How many times have you stopped looking for something because you thought it was too late? How many beautiful stories could have been written if you had trusted a little more in the magic of hope, respect, and the power of kindness? Life is generous to those who open themselves to it with sincerity and altruism. So I ask you, what miracle is waiting for you to take the first step? What reconciliation, what reunion, what new beginning could transform your life right now if you had the courage to believe again? If this story touched your heart, if you felt this living emotion pulsing inside, then don't let this feeling go unnoticed. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and come be part of this community that believes in love, hope, and transformation through humanity and wisdom. Together, we will spread more affection, honesty, and inspiration throughout the world. Because at the end of the day, that's what life is all about. Finding yourself again, starting over, and living with courage, always side by side with those who remind us of who we really are.